There comes a time in every person's life when they realize that no matter how much they give, no matter how much they sacrifice, and no matter how much they try to keep peace, certain people will always drain them, criticize them, or make them feel small. These are toxic people. They thrive on manipulation, on control, and on weakening the confidence of others so they can feel powerful. And the truth is, you cannot convince toxic people to change. You cannot beg them to treat you better, and you cannot keep sacrificing your happiness in the hope that they will finally value you. But there is one powerful change that forces toxic people to walk away, and that change is when you decide to raise your standards and truly enforce your boundaries. One of the most powerful realizations you will ever have in life is this: toxic people don't stay in your world because they are strong, persuasive, or unshakable. They stay because you allow them to. They feed off your tolerance. They test your patience, your kindness, and your loyalty. And as long as you continue to bend, they continue to push. The strength you have inside, the strength to walk away, to say no, to demand respect, isn't what they respond to. In fact, that strength scares them. What keeps them around is your silence in the face of disrespect, your excuses for their bad behavior, and your willingness to give them yet another chance when they've already shown you who they are. Think about it. Every manipulator needs someone to manipulate. Every liar needs someone willing to believe the lie. Every critic needs someone willing to listen to their constant negativity. Toxic people only hold power where their audience remains available. They thrive where they can drain energy without being challenged. And so long as you allow them to use you as their outlet, they will always return. The truth is, toxic relationships, whether they are with a friend, partner, colleague, or family member, cannot survive without your tolerance. You may believe that being patient, kind, and forgiving will eventually inspire them to change. You may even think that if you prove your loyalty long enough, they'll finally value you. But this is where toxic people are different from healthy ones. Healthy people grow when they're shown kindness. They feel inspired when treated with love. Toxic people, on the other hand, see kindness as weakness. They see forgiveness as an opportunity to repeat the same hurtful behavior. They see your silence not as peace, but as permission. That is why no matter how much you love them, they continue to drain you. Now, here is where the shift happens. When you stop tolerating what drains you, everything changes. When you decide that no amount of history, obligation, or guilt is enough reason to endure mistreatment, toxic people lose their power. They cannot survive in an environment where they are not entertained. Imagine their tactics as a fire. It burns only when it has fuel. The moment you cut off the supply, the fire dies out. Likewise, the moment you withdraw your tolerance, their toxic influence loses its effect. This doesn't mean you need to fight with them, prove them wrong, or launch into dramatic confrontations. It simply means you change how you respond. Instead of defending yourself against every false accusation, you choose silence. Instead of trying to please them, you prioritize your peace. Instead of staying available for their games, you make yourself unavailable. Toxic people hate boundaries because boundaries suffocate the very oxygen they need: your tolerance. So many people stay trapped because they confuse tolerance with strength. They think, if I just endure a little more, if I keep showing love, maybe they'll finally see my worth. But true strength isn't about how much you can endure from others. It's about how much you respect yourself to walk away when necessary. Toxic people aren't afraid of your patience, they rely on it. They aren't intimidated by your forgiveness, they exploit it. What truly shakes them is when you stop playing their game. The key is simple: toxic people do not leave because you're weak. They leave because you finally showed your strength by refusing to tolerate what you once accepted. And that is why the most powerful step you can take is to look at every area of your life and ask yourself, what am I tolerating that is draining me? Once you decide that your peace is more valuable than pleasing someone else, toxic people will have no choice but to walk away. Raising your standards is the ultimate game changer. Every relationship in your life, whether personal, professional, or social, functions within the limits of the standards you set. People treat you based on what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you demand. The reason toxic people remain in your world is because they have found comfort in the standards you unconsciously permit. They know where your boundaries lie, and they know how far they can push without consequence. But the moment you decide to raise your standards, everything changes. Raising your standards is not about arrogance, pride, or selfishness. It is about self-respect. It is about understanding that you deserve peace more than chaos, love more than manipulation, and respect more than tolerance. The instant you make that decision, toxic people are confronted with a truth they cannot stand: that their old tactics no longer work on you. Toxic individuals thrive in low-standard environments. When you settle for constant disrespect, they disrespect you more. When you settle for being undervalued, they devalue you further. When you settle for inconsistency, they give you less and less effort. But when you raise the bar, when you set a higher expectation for how you will be treated, you change the entire dynamic. Think about it like this: if your standard in friendship is loyalty, honesty, and mutual support, then anyone who thrives on gossip, betrayal, or competition will feel out of place. If your standard in a relationship is communication, respect, and growth, then anyone who thrives on manipulation or control will eventually back away. Standards act like filters. They reveal who is truly aligned with your values, and who is only there because you lowered the bar for them. Now, raising your standards doesn't mean you will suddenly attract perfect people. It means you stop settling for the ones who consistently take more than they give. It means you refuse to remain in rooms where your presence is not appreciated. It means you no longer confuse endurance with love or patience with loyalty. Instead, you choose quality over quantity, peace over drama, and growth over stagnation. The most powerful part of raising your standards is that it requires no confrontation. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't have to argue, beg, or convince people to treat you better. You simply live by your new standards and allow your actions to speak louder than your words. For example, if you set a standard that you will no longer accept constant criticism, you walk away when it happens. If you set a standard that you won't entertain lies, you cut off trust the moment dishonesty is revealed. Over time, people understand that you mean what you say, and toxic individuals who once thrived in your tolerance begin to distance themselves. Of course, raising your standards may feel uncomfortable at first. People who benefited from your old patterns may call you selfish, arrogant, or difficult. But remember, their resistance is not proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you're growing. When you raise your standards, the wrong people complain, but the right people celebrate. The wrong people pull away, but the right people step closer. The wrong people feel threatened, but the right people feel inspired. Life always reflects the standards you live by. If you keep allowing people to drain you, they will. If you keep allowing disrespect, it will multiply. But if you decide that your time, energy, and heart are too valuable to waste, then toxic people will have no choice but to leave. Why? Because they cannot breathe in the atmosphere of high standards. So, the ultimate game changer is simple. Stop lowering your standards to keep others comfortable, and start raising them to protect your peace. You will be amazed at how quickly the wrong people disappear, and the right ones arrive. Boundaries are protection, not punishment. When most people hear the word boundaries, they imagine walls, conflict, or harsh rules. They assume that setting boundaries means being cold, shutting people out, or creating distance. But in truth, boundaries are not punishments. They are not designed to harm others or push people away. Boundaries are a form of protection. a shield that guards your peace, your energy, and your self-respect. Without boundaries, toxic people will always find their way into your life, because boundaries are the very lines that separate what is healthy from what is harmful. Think of boundaries as doors, not walls. A door allows you to welcome the right people in, while keeping out what doesn't belong. Without a door, anyone can enter your space, even those who bring chaos and destruction. But with a door, you control the flow of what enters your life. This is exactly what boundaries do. They don't shut out love, connection, or kindness. They filter out manipulation, disrespect, and toxicity. Toxic people despise boundaries, because boundaries take away their favorite weapon: access. They thrive on having unlimited access to your time, your emotions, and your attention. They want to be able to call you whenever they need, dump their negativity on you, cross your lines, and take without giving. When you have no boundaries, they win. But when you begin to set limits, when you decide how you will be treated, and what you will no longer allow, you reclaim control. You tell them, without shouting or fighting, "I respect myself too much to be mistreated." And that message is powerful. Many people struggle to set boundaries, because they fear being seen as selfish. They worry that if they say, "no," they will hurt someone's feelings. But let's be clear, boundaries are not about hurting others. They are about protecting yourself. Imagine a house without a fence. Anyone can walk in, trample the garden, or damage the property. Does building a fence mean you hate people? No. It means you respect your home enough to protect it. The same applies to your life. Boundaries are fences for your soul. They don't keep out love, they keep out harm. When you create boundaries, you send a clear signal: this is how I value myself, and this is how I expect to be valued. Healthy people will respect those boundaries because they too live with self-respect. Toxic people, however, will resist. They will call you difficult, dramatic, or uncaring. They will try to guilt you into breaking your own rules. But their reaction is the very reason those boundaries are necessary. A person who truly cares for you won't punish you for protecting yourself. They will honor your need for peace. Boundaries also create clarity. They help you define where you end and another person begins. Without them, you take responsibility for everyone's emotions, problems, and decisions. With them, you free yourself from carrying what doesn't belong to you. For example, if a friend constantly calls to complain, but never seeks solutions, your boundary may be, "I care for you, but I can't spend hours listening to negativity." If a partner disrespects you, your boundary may be, "Respect is non-negotiable. If it's not present, I cannot remain in this relationship." These boundaries are not punishments. They are standards of self-love. Here's the truth: boundaries don't push the right people away, they push the wrong people out. The ones who truly love you will adjust. The ones who only used you will leave. And that's the beauty of it. Boundaries naturally filter out toxicity, without you needing to fight or explain endlessly. So, remember this: setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of courage. It's not about being unkind. It's about being wise. Boundaries are the protective armor that keep your soul intact, your heart safe, and your life free of unnecessary chaos. And the moment you enforce them, toxic people will begin to realize they no longer have free access to your peace. That's when they either change, or they walk away. You don't need confrontation. You need transformation. One of the biggest misconceptions about dealing with toxic people is believing that you have to fight them, expose them, or prove them wrong in order to reclaim your peace. Many people spend years of their lives locked in endless arguments, shouting matches, and attempts to defend themselves against manipulation. But the truth is, toxic people are masters of twisting confrontation into fuel. They thrive on drama, on keeping you entangled in cycles of conflict, and on making you doubt yourself. The more you confront them directly, the more energy you pour into their game. That's why the secret isn't confrontation. It's transformation. Transformation means changing yourself, not trying to change them. Toxic people rarely change, because their behavior is rooted in deep insecurity, control, and entitlement. They will always find a way to justify their actions, to deflect blame, or to paint themselves as the victim. So the more you confront, the more they entrench themselves in their toxicity. But when you transform your response, when you choose peace over conflict, silence over chaos, and growth over proving your point, you take away the very stage they need to perform. Think about this. If someone thrives on pushing your buttons, what happens when those buttons no longer work? They lose control. If someone gains satisfaction from making you argue endlessly, what happens when you refuse to engage? They feel powerless. That is the power of transformation. Instead of pouring energy into trying to fix them, you pour energy into becoming so strong, so peaceful, and so self-assured that their toxicity can no longer reach you. Transformation begins internally. It is the moment you say, I no longer need validation from people who refuse to see my worth. It is when you shift from seeking approval to living in alignment with your values. It is when you understand that your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. This inner shift creates an outer reality where toxic people naturally fade away, because they cannot survive in an environment where you are no longer reacting to them. Of course, this doesn't mean you allow people to mistreat you. It means you handle mistreatment differently. Instead of long debates, you calmly walk away. Instead of defending yourself against every accusation, you rest in the truth you know. Instead of trying to expose their lies, you refuse to participate in their games. Transformation doesn't look loud or dramatic. It looks like quiet strength. It looks like choosing not to waste another ounce of energy on battles that don't deserve your spirit. The beauty of this approach is that it places the power back in your hands. Confrontation often leaves you drained, because you are trying to control another person's behavior, something you can never fully do. Transformation, on the other hand, is completely within your control. You can choose how to respond. You can choose to rise above. You can choose to focus on your growth instead of their chaos. And in doing so, you remove their power over you. Toxic people cannot argue with silence. They cannot manipulate someone who no longer reacts. They cannot control someone who no longer plays their game. That's why transformation is so much more effective than confrontation. It shifts the focus away from trying to change them, which almost never works, and places it on changing yourself, which always works. So, the next time you feel tempted to fight, to argue, or to prove yourself, remember this: you don't need confrontation, you need transformation. The best revenge is not shouting louder, it's living better. The best response is not proving them wrong, it's moving so far ahead in peace and strength that their chaos cannot reach you. Toxic people cannot survive in the light of your transformation, and when you rise, they are left with no choice but to fall away. Self-worth is your silent weapon. There is a kind of power that doesn't require shouting, arguing, or proving yourself. It doesn't need revenge, manipulation, or control. It is subtle, quiet, and invisible, but it shakes toxic people to their core. That power is self-worth. When you know who you are, when you recognize your value, and when you refuse to settle for less than you deserve, you carry a silent weapon that no toxic person can withstand. Toxic people thrive on one thing: your doubt. They feed on your insecurities, your need for approval, and your fear of rejection. They study your weaknesses and use them against you. If you feel unworthy, they will exploit it by giving you crumbs of attention and making you beg for more. If you feel insecure, they will manipulate you into believing you're lucky to have them, even when they mistreat you. If you fear abandonment, they will use that fear to control your choices. That's why self-worth is such a powerful weapon. It dismantles their entire strategy. When you know your worth, you no longer chase people who walk away. You no longer settle for disrespect just to keep someone close. You no longer allow someone else's opinion of you to dictate how you feel about yourself. Instead, you stand firm in the truth that you are enough, as you are. You deserve respect, love, and peace, not because of what you do for others, but because of who you are. Self-worth also changes how you respond to toxicity. A person with low self-worth will argue endlessly, trying to prove they deserve better. A person with strong self-worth doesn't need to argue, they simply walk away. They know that staying in toxic environments is a reflection of how much they undervalue themselves. And so, when they raise their self-worth, they naturally raise their standards, their boundaries, and their entire environment. Toxic people can sense this shift, and it terrifies them. Here's why toxic people cannot manipulate someone who knows their value. They cannot control someone who doesn't fear being alone. They cannot diminish someone who refuses to shrink for their approval. In fact, when you stand in your self-worth, toxic people often do one of two things. They either attempt to escalate their manipulation in desperation, or they leave because they realize they no longer have power over you. Either way, your self-worth remains your shield. But how do you build this silent weapon? Self-worth isn't something you're given. It's something you decide. It begins with the choice to stop outsourcing your value to others. It begins with the belief that your worth is not tied to someone's treatment of you, their opinion of you, or their ability to see your greatness. You build self-worth by keeping promises to yourself, by choosing environments that uplift you, and by refusing to compromise your dignity for temporary validation. One of the greatest lies toxic people tell you is that you are not enough. They want you to believe that without them, you are nothing. But the truth is, your worth was never in their hands. It has always been within you. And when you finally embrace it, something powerful happens. You stop fighting for a place in the wrong people's lives, and you start creating space for the right ones. Remember, this self-worth doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you free. It frees you from begging for love, from tolerating disrespect, and from staying in places where you are not valued. It is your silent weapon because it doesn't require words. It shows in the way you carry yourself, the choices you make, and the standards you uphold. And here's the beauty of it: when you know your worth, toxic people will either have to rise to meet your level, or leave because they can't survive there. Either way, you win. Peace attracts the right people, while strength repels the wrong ones. At the core of every human being is a desire for peace. We all want a life that feels calm, fulfilling, and purposeful. But often, peace feels out of reach because we are surrounded by the wrong people. The ones who thrive on chaos, negativity, and control. Toxic people cannot exist in environments of peace, because peace starves them of the drama they need to survive. The good news is that when you begin to live with peace and strength, you naturally create a filter. The right people are drawn to you, and the wrong ones are pushed away. Toxic people are like storms, they come with noise, disruption, and confusion. They need to stir things up to feel relevant. They need to provoke, manipulate, and control to maintain influence. But peace is the opposite of their nature. Peace is steady, calm, and grounded. When you build peace within yourself, when you stop engaging in unnecessary conflict, when you refuse to be pulled into drama, when you choose calmness over chaos, you send a silent message. This space is not available for toxicity. And just like that, the people who feed off drama feel suffocated and leave. Strength works hand in hand with peace. It's one thing to desire peace, but it takes strength to protect it. Strength is what allows you to say no when people try to bring chaos into your life. Strength is what empowers you to enforce your boundaries and walk away from situations that threaten your calm. It's not a loud, aggressive strength, it's a quiet confidence that says, "I value my peace too much to sacrifice it." This combination of peace and strength creates an atmosphere where only the right people can remain. The right people are drawn to peace because they value it too. Healthy individuals want calmness, kindness, and respect. They don't need drama to feel alive. They thrive in environments of trust and positivity. When you radiate peace, you naturally attract others who live the same way. They are drawn to your energy, your balance, and your stability. They don't see your strength as a threat. They see it as inspiration. But the wrong people, they can't handle it. Toxic people interpret peace as boredom because they need conflict to feel important. They see strength as resistance because they need weakness to maintain control. They cannot thrive in your calmness, and they cannot survive in your firmness. That is why your peace and your strength act as natural repellents. You don't have to push them away. They will remove themselves because they can no longer breathe in the environment you've created. Here's the beauty: you don't have to fight toxic people, expose them, or prove them wrong. You only need to live in alignment with peace and strength. The more you choose peace over drama, the more you strengthen your boundaries, the more your life naturally filters itself. The wrong people leave, and the right people stay. But cultivating peace and strength takes intentional effort. It means choosing your battles wisely. It means refusing to let other people's chaos disturb your inner calm. It means practicing self-control, patience, and discipline when others try to provoke you. It means knowing when to walk away, not because you are weak, but because you are too strong to waste energy where it doesn't belong. When you master this balance, life feels lighter. You no longer spend sleepless nights replaying toxic conversations. You no longer feel drained from constant drama. Instead, your relationships become healthier, your environment becomes calmer, and your energy becomes magnetic to people who value and uplift you. So remember, this peace is your magnet, and strength is your shield. Together, they create a powerful filter. The right people, those who love you, respect you, and grow with you, will be drawn into your life. The wrong people, those who thrive on chaos and control, will be pushed out. And you won't have to force anything, because peace and strength will do the work for you.